You're listening to the Valley Current.
You look good.
So do you.
Well, thank you very much. I've been trying to exercise a lot and trying to lose weight. It's a constant battle. But you made a remark that says all the time I spend exercising is sort of shortening my available life because I'm spending it exercising as opposed to doing
right. There was another similar statement made by a group of physicians who said they are exercising instead of when they are working at the hospital. They do not use the elevator, but they climb the stairs to reach various hospital floors.
Right.
And someone noted that the increase in their longevity will be spent climbing stairs.
And they would say that's okay because they're still engaged in some thinking process while they're climbing the stairs.
Well, if that's a definition of quality of life, then the answer is yes.
Well, I want to get to quality of life because we have some recent news that says our lifespans are shortening for the first time, which makes sense, I suppose, given the pandemic.
Well, as I wrote to you, I published a paper with colleagues 13 or 15 years ago, making the same claim based on different data. And that data was obesity.
Right.
Which was on the increase in this country and caused the emergence of various life-threatening illnesses.
Right.
But now the new data is based on something that's very obvious, and that's the pandemic. So they're two different causes.
Right. Well, or you could say there's some comorbidities because elderly obese people in particular have a high risk factor for COVID deaths or COVID disabilities.
There are other things that nobody talks about. One of them is if there is a decrease in births in the US, then that will increase life expectancy.
If there's an increase or a decrease in births, if there's a decrease in births, right?
I'm sorry, if there's a decrease.
Decrease in births, right?
Yes, then life expectancy will increase.
So,
but people don't understand the difference between life expectancy and lifespan.
Right.
I think you know the difference, but many people don't.
Well, what would you state is the difference?
The difference is that lifespan is the maximum age that a member of a species has lived or can live based on what available data.
Right.
For humans, it's about 120.
Right.
And that doesn't change. It fluctuates up and down a little bit, but it has never changed as far as we know in millennia.
Right. Even though Madame Calment, if the data is correct, did break through that.
Yes.
If
and there are other people who have approached 120. You can't put an exact age on it, but it's about 120.
Right.
And that has not changed.
There might be some black swan exceptions, but it's not going to go much further out than maybe 5%, 10% at the most, right?
And the other thing is I was held up this morning because the Associated Press released an article on aging that has a lot of information about my work.
Ah, okay.
I just got an image from the Manila Times in the Philippine Islands with that article appearing. And it's probably going to appear in thousands of newspapers around the world. In fact, my sister-in-law just called and said, the article appears in our local newspaper in York, Pennsylvania.
Wow.
in both newspapers in York, Pennsylvania, with my photo on the page.
Wow, you're famous, Len. You are famous.
The articles like this about me have appeared for decades. This is not unique. I'm going to send you a copy by email, but I'm warning you in advance, you're going to get it.
Yeah.
And like all articles about my work in the past 50 or 60 years, it is only about 80% accurate. No journalist has achieved more than 80% accuracy.
They keep getting it wrong, right?
Well, this is typical of every article written by every journalist about any item you can think of.
Yeah.
And that's critical in your thinking when you read newspaper articles. And television is even worse.
The accuracy has gone down over time, that's for sure.
This morning, some talking head is talking about the executive privilege that has been awarded for all the documents stolen by Trump.
Yeah.
It's not executive privilege that's the discussion about. It's attorney-client privilege. They're two amazingly different things.
But why is the Manila Times in this? You've piqued my interest about Manila.
I'll send you the article. I'll send it to you right now if you want it.
Okay.
Well, I don't know whether I can do that. I don't know how to do that while I'm online with you.
Yeah, I'll try to find it. Is it is it about zombie cells key to quest for vital old age?
Yes.
I found it. I found it quickly as you were talking. I'll put it on the screen.
Well, I don't need to read it. I already read it.
You read it, but I need to read it. So it's I can do it in real time. It says a 95-year-old Richard Zoller zips around a makeshift track encircling
later in the article.
Right. This is all about
roll down. That's all garbage.
That's all the clickbait to try to get people to keep reading.
Yeah,
right?
it's the usual garbage.
I'm not looking for the fountain of youth, Wiley says. I'm looking for the fountain of not being sick when I'm older. Okay. Then it says mortal cells, Leonard Hayflick, the scientist who discovered cellular senescence in 1960s, is himself vital at 94. He's a professor of anatomy at the University of California, San Francisco, and continues to write, present, and speak on this topic, right? That sounds right. Yeah, they got that right.
That's part of the 80%.
Yeah, that's part of the 8%. At his seaside home in Sonoma County, that sounds right. He leafs through a binder filled with his research, including 2 early papers that have been cited an astonishing number of times by other researchers. Before him on the living room table, did they interview you for this? I guess they must have, right?
By phone, yes.
Oh, by phone, okay. Not by Zoom, just by phone. Right.
I believe it was just by phone. I do so many interviews, I can't remember details.
Yeah, you're staying really active. That's clear. I'll put this on the screen just so you can see it. I found it. His seminal book,
yes.
How and Why We Age in Various Languages. Okay.
Well, the AP, the Associated Press, sends out articles written by their staffers.
Right.
To thousands of papers and TV stations and other news outlets worldwide, for which they pay a fee. That's how you find articles in your local newspaper that are authored by people in foreign countries.
Right.
So that's no surprise that the Manila Times was one of the first to act. I'm sure there are thousands of others who are going to print it.
Right.
And I'll be deluged.
Right. So they go on. I mean, it's interesting that it's in the Manila Times. They got a picture of you here, Len.
Oh, hold that picture.
Yeah.
Now that one was taken by somebody. I don't know who the hell took it, but that's an accurate photo, yes.
Yeah, that looks like a current photo, right? Relatively current.
Yes, and
May 23rd.
The book I'm holding is a collection of my published papers, about 300 papers.
Right.
And on the desk in front of me are foreign copies of my book.
Right.
Copies in Japanese, Hebrew, French, German, Polish, about 20 different countries have published it in their language.
Right. Right.
And that's the interior of my living room. That's my mother and father's baby grand piano.
Right.
Which I still have in my home here.
Nice.
The table on which the book sits is very important. That table was built by Nakashima. Nakashima is a world famous furniture maker from whom my wife Ruth knew about him. I didn't.
Right.
And when we were early in our marriage in Philadelphia, she knew about him, and we drove with our then 3 children to Bucks County, where he had his workshop.
Right.
And Ruth wanted a coffee table from him. And so she waited in the car. Actually, she brought a picnic lunch, and they had picnic by a little stream nearby. It's a very interesting story, so let me finish.
Okay.
And meanwhile, I went up to the facility where Nakashima, the Japanese, relatively known in local area, where he had his shop.
Right.
Told him what I wanted, and he said, sure. And he took me outside of the little barn-like place, and leaning against the exterior wall were slabs of wood. And he said, I will make you a coffee table out of English walnut.
Nice.
And I said, fine. And he reached to his back pocket and pulled out a large slab of chalk and chalked the outline of the coffee table, which you cannot see in its entirety in this photo. But
right.
Someday when you visit me, I'll show it to you.
Yeah, it looks
and
beautiful.
He took the slab indoors, and he said, I will call you in a few weeks to tell you to pick it up. My wife and I paid $175 for it, which was a lot of money for us at that time.
Right.
And in the intervening years, he became world famous. That table, and you can look it up online actually, is now selling for $15,000.
Wow. It's beautiful.
It's a Nakashima table. You can look up Nakashima. His works are being sold worldwide, and you will find my coffee table illustrated.
Is he still alive?
I don't know. He's not.
He's Japanese?
Yes, but he's an American. He's Nisei.
Mm-hmm.
It's Nakashimi.
Right. So going back to this Manila Times article, you would say this is another example of misuse of your work to some degree. They get it 80% right, but 20% is designed to try to make it sound like people can live forever.
It's not that part that I'm referring to. I'm referring to the actual description of my work.
Yeah.
In which many errors of omission and commission appear.
Right. Right. But they're usually all designed to give people some hope that they can live far beyond life expectancy to get back to that point, which is more like what the average age is of folks who are dying. Typically, people thought it was getting into the 80s, but now it's reverted back into the 70s, right? We've had a loss of life expectancy in the last couple of years through the pandemic and other reasons, right?
Well, it depends on what you mean. There is a drop in life expectancy, yes, as indicated in the past couple of years and even earlier. But life expectancy hasn't changed that much. It hasn't increased significantly either. When there has been an increase, it's been an increase of a month or 2 or 3 at the most.
Right.
And then a year or 2 later, it backs off a month or 2. So it's fluctuating around the age of 80 for everybody. You can break it down and find that life expectancy is greater for women than for men. In many instances, actually, it's greater for Hispanic Americans than it is for non-Hispanic Americans. And so you can cut it in dozens of different ways. What you will not read in those articles is a fact that they don't want you to hear, mostly because they have never heard of it. And that is, life expectancy can never exceed an average of 92 years. Why do I say that? Because if you do the mathematics, which is very easy to do, if you do the math on the leading causes of death in the United States, and you reduce them one by one, and each time you reduce one statistically, and substitute for that number all of the remaining causes of death in their numbers, and you do that sequentially, you discover that if you cure every cause of death written on death certificates except accidents, homicides, suicides, which you cannot control, then you discover that average life expectancy, if everything else is cured, cannot exceed 92 years. Impossible.
So we'll never really break that number, even as all these companies are pushing the envelope of suggesting, well, if you do this and you do that and you take this and you take that and you do this treatment and you do that treatment. And now we have polio too, that's resurrected itself, which was another thing I wanted to cover with you, because you're an expert in that area and you've seen the news reports about the findings about polio resurfacing. What you're saying is basically those sets of numbers are not really going to get beyond 92 years for either.
Yes, it's not possible. The polio story has several important pieces of information that are critical in understanding what's going on. First of all,
Stay tuned for part 2 of this episode of The Valley Current.